Hey peeps, Tyler here with a mini book haul. For the first book I have Bury Your Gaze, an anthology of tragic queer horror. A manifestation of ecstasy, heartache, horror, and suffering rendered in feverish lyrical prose. Inside are 16 new stories by some of the genre's most visionary queer writers. Young lovers find themselves deliriously lost in an expanding garden labyrinth. The porter of a sentient hotel is haunted within a liminal time loop. A soldier and his abusive commanding officer escape a war in the trenches, but discover themselves in an even greater nightmare. Parasites chase each other across time, space in hungry desperation to never be apart. A graduate student with violent tendencies falls into step with a seemingly walking corpse. The next book I have here is Jamaica Inn. I have read Rebecca. I think it's been a few years at least, but I loved Rebecca. I have not seen any movie. I don't know if there's one or more. I'm sure there's one. I just don't know how many. But I loved Rebecca, and I've been wanting to read more by her. And one of the Goodreads groups is apparently reading this in October, so hopefully I'll get to it, but we'll see. If I don't get to it October, I'll get to it sometime later. The last book I have here is The Anxious Generation, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness, which I mentioned in my last video about social media, where I deleted my social media, and it's not even out yet, or posted yet by the time when I'm filming this. Because I filmed that on Saturday, September 14th, and now it's Tuesday, September 17th, that I got the book and I'm filming the book haul. But the video's not even going to be out till Wednesday, about the social media. But then this will be out Friday. Anyway, the power of scheduling. So yeah, I got The Anxious Generation, which, as I said, I mentioned in my previous video, because I had watched a TED Talk by the author, and this was already on my to-read list. So, yeah. I didn't realize that it was the author of the book until I started, in like the middle of the TED Talk. So, when they mentioned it. But from New York Times bestselling co-author of The Coddling of the American Mind, an essential investigation into the collapse of youth mental health and a plan for a healthier, freer childhood. After more than a decade of stability or improvement, the mental health of adolescents plunged in the early 2010s. Rates of depression and anxiety, self-harm, and suicide rose sharply, more than doubling on many measures. Why? In The Anxious Generation, social psychologist Jonathan lays out the facts about the epidemic of teen mental illness that hit many countries at the same time. He then investigates the nature of childhood, including why children need play and independent exploration to mature into competent, thriving adults. He shows how the play-based childhood began to decline in the 1980s and how it was finally wiped out by the arrival of the phone-based childhood in the early 2010s. He presents more than a dozen mechanisms by which this great rewiring of childhood has interfered with children's social and neurological development, covering everything from sleep deprivation to attention fragmentation, addiction, loneliness, social contagion, social comparison, and perfectionism. He explains why social media damages girls more than boys, and why boys have been withdrawing from the real world into the virtual world, with disastrous consequences for themselves, their families, and their societies. Most important, he issues a clear call to action. He diagnoses the collective action problems that trap us, and then proposes 4 simple rules that might set us free. He describes steps that parents, teachers, schools, tech companies, and governments can take to end the epidemic of mental illness and restore a more humane childhood. He has spent his career speaking truth backed by data in the most difficult landscapes, communities polarized by politics and religion, campuses battling culture wars, and now the public health emergency faced by Gen Z. We cannot afford to ignore his findings about protecting our children and ourselves from the psychological damage of a phone-based life. So, yes. Those are the books, and I did get one bookmark, which I haven't actually gotten out of the plastic. A digital bookmark, which has orcas on it, and even a digital mark your time thing. That is my mini September book haul. Like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell if you want to. Thank you for watching. Let me know how this looks.